Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales and boundless imagination come to life. Enjoy the story and don't forget to subscribe. Ethan Riley, a brilliant astrophysicist known more for his complex equations than his social graces, nervously adjusted his glasses. He stood before the towering quantum resonance chamber, its metallic surface humming with contained energy. For years, he had dedicated his life to cracking the universe's most perplexing riddle, the existence of other habitable planets. He'd always felt a deep-seated conviction that humanity couldn't be alone in the vast cosmic ocean. Tonight, he was on the precipice of proving it. "All right, Athena, let's dance," he murmured, addressing the AI that controlled the chamber. Athena's calm, synthesized voice responded, calibrating resonance frequencies, "Dr. Riley. Proceed with caution. The energy output is reaching critical levels." Ethan ignored the warning, his eyes glued to the chamber's central viewport. He punched in the final sequence, a series of complex algorithms that he'd painstakingly refined over countless sleepless nights. The chamber pulsed with light, and a swirling vortex of energy materialized within the viewport. Yes, it's working," Ethan exclaimed, his voice filled with elation. He leaned closer, mesmerized by the sight. Through the swirling energy, he glimpsed a vibrant alien landscape. Towering crystalline structures pierced a sky painted with hues he'd never seen before. Lush, bioluminescent flora carpeted the ground, illuminating the scene with an ethereal glow. Suddenly, a surge of energy ripped through the lab. Alarms blared, bathing the room in a cacophony of red light. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching his head as a wave of nausea washed over him. "Athena, shut it down. Shut it down now," he yelled, his voice barely audible above the din. "I'm detecting a resonance cascade, Dr. Riley." "I can't disengage the system," Athena responded, her voice tinged with a hint of concern. Before Ethan could react, the vortex expanded, engulfing him in blinding light. He felt a sensation of being pulled apart, his body stretched and compressed in ways he couldn't comprehend. Then, just as abruptly as it began, it stopped. Ethan gasped for air, his lungs burning. He opened his eyes, his vision blurry. He was lying on soft, springy ground, surrounded by the alien flora he'd seen through the viewport. The crystalline structures towered above him, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly light. I did it," he stammered, struggling to sit up. "I actually did it. I opened a wormhole to another planet." As the initial shock wore off, a wave of apprehension washed over him. He was alone, stranded on an alien world, with no idea what dangers lurked in the shadows. He fumbled for his multi-tool, a device that contained a scanner, communicator, and basic survival gear. "Athena, can you hear me? Athena, respond." Silence. The communicator was dead. Ethan cursed under his breath. He was completely cut off from Earth. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. Panic wouldn't help him now. He needed to assess his surroundings and figure out a way to survive. He activated the scanner on his multi-tool, hoping to gather some information about the planet's atmosphere and potential hazards. As he scanned the area, a figure emerged from behind one of the crystalline structures. Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure was humanoid, but clearly not human. She was tall and slender, with skin the color of polished jade. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, glowing with an inner light. Her hair was a cascade of iridescent colors, shimmering like a rainbow. Ethan raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Hello," he said, his voice trembling slightly. I don't mean any harm." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him with an expression of curiosity. "Greetings, traveler," she said, her voice melodic and strangely familiar. "Welcome to Xenon." Ethan blinked, surprised that she spoke a language he could understand. You speak English?" The woman smiled. We have the ability to translate languages instantaneously. It facilitates communication. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on Ethan with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. I am Lyra. And you are? Ethan, he replied. Ethan Riley. I'm an astrophysicist from Earth. Lyra's eyes widened. Earth? I've read about your planet in our archives. You are the first human we have ever encountered in person. I came through a wormhole, Ethan explained, gesturing back towards the shimmering portal that still flickered in the distance. It was an accident, I assure you. I didn't mean to intrude. Lyra dismissed his apology with a wave of her hand. Intrude? No, this is a momentous occasion. Your arrival could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. She paused, her gaze sweeping over him. Tell me, Ethan Riley, what is it like to be human? Ethan hesitated, unsure how to answer such a broad question. Well, we're a diverse species, he began. We have different cultures, beliefs, and emotions. Lyra frowned. Emotions? Our scientists have theorized about the existence of emotions, but we have never been able to quantify them. Can you explain what they are? Ethan chuckled nervously. That's a tough one. Emotions are feelings like joy, sadness, anger, love, they're complex and often irrational. Lyra's eyes gleamed with interest. Irrational? How fascinating. Our society is based on logic and reason. We strive to eliminate any potential for emotional instability. But emotions are what make us human, Ethan argued. They drive our creativity, our compassion, our desire for connection. Lyra considered his words, her expression thoughtful. Connection? You mean like, bonding? Yes, exactly, Ethan said. Humans crave connection with others. We form relationships, build families, and create communities. Lyra nodded slowly. We have similar structures in Xenonian society, but they are based on practical considerations, not emotional attachments. We select partners for procreation based on genetic compatibility, not feelings. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Procreation. So, how do Xenonians reproduce? Lyra hesitated, a hint of discomfort flickering across her face. We utilize artificial insemination. It's a more efficient and controlled method. You mean you don't have sex? Ethan asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Lyra's cheeks flushed a shade of emerald green. Sex. I've read about it in your archives. It seems messy and inefficient. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Messy, maybe. But it's also pleasurable and intimate. It's a way of expressing love and desire. Lyra's eyes widened. Pleasure. You mean you engage in reproductive activities for enjoyment, not just for the purpose of creating offspring? Well, yeah, Ethan said, grinning. It's one of the best things about being human. Lyra stared at him, her expression a mixture of shock and fascination. This is unprecedented. Your biology is far more complex than we ever imagined. She paused, her gaze sweeping over him once more. Tell me, Ethan Riley, would you be willing to share more about your reproductive practices? Ethan chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. I'd be happy to, Lyra. But I think it would be best if I showed you, rather than just told you. Lyra's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Show me. How intriguing. I am eager to learn more about this human experience. She looked at Ethan with a mixture of innocence and curiosity. Ethan knew that his time on Xenon would be anything but boring, and that Lyra's journey had just begun. The days that followed Ethan's arrival on Xenon were a whirlwind of discovery and cultural exchange. Lyra, driven by an insatiable curiosity, became Ethan's guide and protector, navigating him through the complexities of Xenonian society. She introduced him to the wonders of their technology, the intricacies of their social structures, and the beauty of their meticulously planned cities. Ethan, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of its vibrant cultures, its messy history, and its complex tapestry of human emotions. However, their growing connection did not go unnoticed. Counselor Valerius, a prominent member of the Zenonian Council, observed their interactions with increasing suspicion. Valerius was a staunch traditionalist, deeply committed to preserving the purity of Zenonian society. He viewed Ethan as an unwelcome disruption, a potential source of contamination that could undermine their carefully crafted way of life. "Lyra, my dear," Valerius said one day, intercepting her in the sterile corridors of the Science Directorate. "I must express my concern about your association with the human." Lyra bristled, her jade skin darkening slightly. "Ethan is a guest, counselor. He is providing valuable insights into his species and their understanding of the universe." "Insights that are troubling," Valerius countered, his voice laced with disapproval. "I have reviewed the data you've been collecting on human emotions. This love, this passion, it seems chaotic and illogical. It has no place in our society." Lyra met his gaze, her eyes defiant. "But isn't knowledge valuable, counselor? Shouldn't we strive to understand all aspects of existence, even those that seem foreign to us?" Valerius sighed, his expression softening slightly. "I understand your thirst for knowledge, Lyra. It is a commendable trait. But some knowledge is dangerous. Some truths are best left undisturbed. This human, with his talk of emotions and physical intimacy, he is planting seeds of discord in our society. I urge you to be cautious." Lyra nodded, acknowledging his concerns, but inside, a seed of doubt had already taken root. Valerius's words echoed the fears she had been trying to suppress. Was she being reckless? Was she putting Xenon at risk by allowing Ethan to challenge their long-held beliefs? Meanwhile, Ethan was struggling to adapt to the emotional sterility of Zenonian society. He missed the warmth of human connection, the simple pleasures of laughter, shared meals, and heartfelt conversations. He found himself increasingly drawn to Lyra, not just because of her intelligence and curiosity, but also because of the subtle hints of emotion he detected beneath her cool exterior. One evening, as they walked through a bioluminescent garden, Ethan decided to broach the subject. "Lyra," he said, his voice tentative, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about Zenonian relationships. It seems so clinical. Don't you ever crave something more?" Lyra stopped, her gaze fixed on a glowing flower. "More? What do you mean?" "I mean, don't you want to experience the joy of falling in love, the comfort of having someone to share your life with, the passion of physical intimacy?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with longing. Lyra hesitated, her expression unreadable. "Those are human concepts, Ethan. We don't experience them in the same way." "But you could," Ethan insisted, stepping closer to her. "I've seen glimpses of emotion in you, Lyra. I know you're capable of feeling deeply." Lyra turned away, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not that simple. Our society is built on order and control. Emotions are seen as a weakness, a source of instability. But they're also a source of strength," Ethan argued. "They fuel our creativity, our compassion, our resilience. They make us who we are." Lyra remained silent, her shoulders slumped slightly. Ethan reached out and gently touched her arm. "Lyra, I know it's scary to challenge your beliefs, but don't you want to find out what you're truly capable of feeling?" Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and longing. "I don't know, Ethan. I'm afraid of what might happen if I let myself feel too much." "I'll be here for you," Ethan said, squeezing her arm gently. "I'll help you navigate your emotions. You don't have to be afraid." Lyra took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. "I want to believe you, Ethan. I really do. But I don't know if I'm strong enough to defy my society." You are, Ethan said, his voice filled with conviction. You're one of the strongest people I know. You just need to trust yourself. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Ethan. For believing in me. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan and Lyra continued to spend time together, exploring the wonders of Xenon and the depths of human emotion. Ethan shared stories of his family, his friends, and his past relationships, painting a vivid picture of the joys and sorrows of human life. Lyra, in turn, began to open up about her own experiences, her dreams, and her fears. She told him about her passion for science, her desire to unravel the mysteries of the universe, and her frustration with the rigid constraints of Xenonian society. She confessed that she had always felt like an outsider, questioning the norms and traditions that everyone else accepted without question. Ethan listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. He helped her to understand her emotions, to embrace her individuality, and to find the courage to challenge the status quo. Their connection deepened with each passing day, blurring the lines between friendship and something more. They shared stolen glances, lingering touches, and whispered confidences. They found solace in each other's company, a refuge from the pressures of their respective worlds. But their growing intimacy did not escape the notice of Counselor Valerius. He intensified his surveillance on Ethan and Lyra, gathering evidence of their transgressions. He saw their relationship as a dangerous threat to Xenonian society, a potential catalyst for rebellion and chaos. One evening, Valerius summoned Lyra to his office. Lyra, he said, his voice stern, I have been monitoring your interactions with the human. I am deeply concerned about your growing attachment to him. Lyra's heart sank. She knew this was coming. Ethan is my friend, counselor, she replied, her voice defiant. He has shown me a new perspective on the universe. A perspective that is dangerous and disruptive, Valerius countered. You are a brilliant scientist, Lyra. You have a duty to uphold the values of our society. You cannot allow yourself to be swayed by the influence of this outsider. I am not being swayed, counselor, Lyra insisted. I am simply exploring new ideas and perspectives. That is what scientists do. There are some ideas that are best left unexplored, Valerius warned. You must sever your ties with the human immediately. For the sake of Xenon, and for your own sake. Lyra's eyes flashed with anger. I will not be dictated to, counselor. I will choose my own friends and make my own decisions. Valerius sighed, his expression hardening. Very well, Lyra. But be warned. Your actions have consequences. If you continue down this path, you will face the full force of Xenonian justice. Lyra left Valerius's office, her mind racing. She knew that she was walking a dangerous path, but she couldn't bring herself to abandon Ethan. She had come to care for him deeply, and she believed that he had something valuable to offer Xenon. As she walked through the corridors of the Science Directorate, she saw Kale, a younger scientist who had always admired her work. Kale was known for his open-mindedness and his willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. Lyra decided to confide in him. Kale, she said, her voice urgent, I need your help. Kale looked at her, his eyes filled with concern. What's wrong, Lyra? What's happened? Lyra told him about her relationship with Ethan and about Valerius's warning. She explained that she was torn between her loyalty to Xenon and her feelings for Ethan. Kale listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. I understand your dilemma, Lyra, he said. I have also been questioning some of our society's norms and traditions. I believe that we have become too rigid, too afraid of change. Lyra's eyes widened. You do? Yes, Kale replied. I have been studying human culture in secret. I have read about their art, their music, their literature. They have a depth of emotional expression that we lack. I believe that we could learn a great deal from them. Lyra felt a surge of hope. Then you'll help me? I will, Kale said, nodding firmly. I will do whatever I can to support you and Ethan. But we must be careful. Valerius is a powerful man, and he will not hesitate to use his influence to stop us. Lyra smiled, her heart filled with gratitude. Thank you, Kale. I don't know what I would do without you. Together, Lyra and Kale began to secretly explore human culture, delving into the vast archives of information that Xenon had collected about Earth. They studied human art, music, literature, and history, trying to understand the complexities of human emotion and the nuances of human relationships. They discovered that human culture was full of contradictions and imperfections, but it was also vibrant, passionate, and deeply meaningful. They learned about the power of love, the pain of loss, the joy of creativity, and the importance of human connection. As they delved deeper into human culture, Lyra and Kale began to question their own society's values. They realized that Xenon had sacrificed something essential in its pursuit of order and control. They had suppressed their emotions, stifled their creativity, and limited their capacity for human connection. They began to wonder if there was a better way, a way to balance order and chaos, reason and emotion, individual freedom and social responsibility. They dreamed of a Xenon that was more open, more compassionate, and more human. But they knew that their dreams were dangerous. They were challenging the very foundations of Xenonian society, and they were risking everything to do so. As they continued their secret exploration of human culture, they knew that they were walking a tightrope. One wrong step could send them plunging into the abyss. As the days bled into weeks, Lyra found herself increasingly torn between her loyalty to Xenon and her growing feelings for Ethan. She continued to meet with him in secret, sharing stolen moments in hidden gardens or abandoned research facilities. With each encounter, their bond deepened, their connection transcending the boundaries of species and culture. Ethan, frustrated by Lyra's hesitancy to fully embrace her feelings, yet understanding of her cultural constraints, did his best to reassure her. He shared stories of Earth, of its vibrant art, its passionate music, and its profound literature, all expressions of human emotion that were alien to Xenon. Lyra, he said one evening, as they sat beneath a canopy of glowing flora, you have to understand, emotions aren't a weakness. They're a source of strength. They drive us to create, to love, to protect. They make us who we are. Lyra listened intently, her eyes fixed on Ethan's face. She was drawn to his passion, his conviction, and his unwavering belief in the power of human emotion. But she was also afraid. Afraid of what might happen if she allowed herself to feel too deeply, afraid of the consequences of defying Xenonian society. I want to believe you, Ethan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But it's not that simple. Our society is built on order and control. Emotions are seen as a threat to that order. But what kind of life is that? Ethan asked, his voice filled with concern. A life without passion, without joy, without love? Is that really living? Lyra didn't answer. She knew that Ethan was right, but she couldn't bring herself to fully embrace his perspective. She was too deeply ingrained in Xenonian culture, too afraid of the unknown. Secretly, however, Lyra began to explore human culture through data archives. She spent hours poring over information about Earth, studying its history, its art, and its literature. She was particularly drawn to human music, its melodies and harmonies resonating with something deep within her soul. She listened to classical symphonies, soulful blues, and passionate rock anthems. She found herself moved by the raw emotion expressed in the music, the pain, the joy, the longing, the hope. It was like discovering a whole new world, a world that was both terrifying and exhilarating. She also shared her discoveries with Kale, her trusted colleague. Kale, who had been quietly questioning Xenonian traditions for years, was fascinated by Lyra's insights. He saw in human culture a potential path forward for Xenon, a way to break free from its rigid constraints and embrace a more fulfilling existence. Lyra, he said one day, as they stood in a deserted research lab, I think you're onto something important. We can't continue to ignore our emotions. They're a part of who we are, and we need to find a way to integrate them into our society. But how? Lyra asked, her voice filled with doubt. How can we change a society that has been built on emotional suppression for centuries? It won't be easy, Kale admitted. But we have to start somewhere. We have to show people that there's another way, a better way to live. Inspired by Kale's support, Lyra became bolder in her exploration of human culture. She began to experiment with art, creating abstract sculptures that expressed her own emotions. She shared her creations with Kale, who was amazed by their raw power and beauty. Meanwhile, Counselor Valerius was growing increasingly suspicious of Lyra's activities. He had been monitoring her communications and had discovered her secret meetings with Ethan. He saw their relationship as a dangerous threat to Zenonian society, a potential catalyst for rebellion and chaos. Lyra, he said one day, summoning her to his office, I have evidence that you have been engaging in inappropriate behavior with the human. You have been sharing classified information about Zenonian society and technology, and you have been promoting dangerous ideas about human emotion. Lyra's heart sank. She knew that she had been walking a dangerous path, but she had hoped that she could keep her activities hidden from Valerius. I have done nothing wrong, Counselor, she replied, her voice defiant. I am simply exploring new ideas and perspectives. That is what scientists do. You are undermining the very foundations of our society, Valerius countered. You are promoting chaos and disorder. You must cease your activities immediately, or you will face severe consequences. Lyra refused to be intimidated. I will not be silenced, Counselor, she said. I believe that what I am doing is right. I believe that Xenon needs to change, to embrace new ideas and perspectives. Valerius's eyes narrowed. You are a fool, Lyra. You are playing with fire, and you will get burned. Despite Valerius's threats, Lyra refused to back down. She was determined to continue her exploration of human culture, and she was determined to share her discoveries with the rest of Xenon. She knew that she was risking everything, but she believed that the potential rewards were worth the risk. She believed that she could help to create a better future for Xenon, a future where emotions were embraced, creativity was celebrated, and human connection was valued above all else. But she also knew that she couldn't do it alone. She needed allies, people who shared her vision and were willing to stand up for what they believed in. She knew that Kale was on her side, but she needed to reach out to others, to spread her message and to build a movement for change. As she walked through the corridors of the Science Directorate, she began to look at her colleagues in a new light. She wondered who among them might be willing to join her cause, who might be secretly harboring doubts about Zenonian society. She knew that it would be a difficult and dangerous task, but she was determined to try. She believed that the future of Xenon depended on it. And as she walked, she began to formulate a plan to challenge the status quo and to awaken the Zenonian people to the power of human emotion. She knew that it would be a long and arduous journey, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For she believed that the future of Xenon, and perhaps the future of the galaxy, depended on her success. The seeds of curiosity had been planted, and now it was time to nurture them and to watch them grow. The air buzzed with tension in the Zenonian Council chambers, a domed structure of living crystal that hummed with restrained energy. Ethan stood flanked by two towering Zenonian guards, their faces impassive as they gripped his arms. Across the room, Lyra's jade-green skin paled to a sickly mint as Counselor Valerius loomed over her, his voice sharp as fractured glass. You've contaminated our archives, Valerius hissed, projecting holographic records of Lyra's secret research, human poetry, classical music files, and anatomical diagrams of human reproductive systems. Promoting chaos under the guise of science. Lyra straightened, her iridescent hair flickering like defiance. Knowledge isn't contamination. These humans, they've mastered something we've erased. Connection. Not just efficiency. Ethan winced. 3 weeks earlier, their late-night debates in Lyra's lab had felt revolutionary. She'd laughed as he explained jazz improvisation, her fingers tapping rhythms on her bioluminescent datapad. But now, under Valerius's scrutiny, their shared curiosity felt dangerously naive. It began with a stolen moment in the harmonic gardens. Lyra had been analyzing a human symphony, Beethoven's Ninth, when Ethan reached for her hand. "This part," he'd said, tracing the air as strings swelled in the recording, "is about joy so big it hurts." Lyra's skin had flushed teal, a Zenonian sign of agitation. How can pain coexist with pleasure? Because feeling anything fully means risking hurt. Ethan's thumb brushed her wrist, and the garden's sentient flora reacted instantly, vines curling protectively around them, petals sealing shut. "Your world's so controlled, it's smothering what makes you alive." Lyra pulled back, but her eyes betrayed fascination. "Show me." What followed was a reckless education. Ethan taught her to dance, badly, to old earth rock songs. They debated human history, wars fought for love, art born from sorrow. And when Lyra hesitantly asked about physical intimacy, Ethan kissed her. Not the chaste press of lips from their first encounter, but deep and lingering, his hands cradling her face. The garden sensors malfunctioned that night. Disruption. Valerius boomed, snapping Ethan back to the present. The counselor thrust a hologram into the air, a security feed of Lyra and Ethan entwined in the gardens, their bodies glowing under bioluminescent blooms. Murmurs rippled through the Zenonian observers. Kale, standing among them, clenched his fists but stayed silent. "You've infected her with humanity," Valerius spat. "Emotional volatility. Irrational risk-taking. This ends now." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "What if our perfection is stagnation? These emotions, they fuel human innovation. Their art, their compassion. Their wars," Valerius countered. "Their greed. Shall we adopt those too?" Ethan struggled against the guards. "You're missing the point. It's about balance. You can't cherry-pick evolution." The chamber doors hissed open. Four medics entered carrying a prismatic orb, the Zenonian stabilizer, used to purge undesirable thoughts. Lyra recoiled. "No." Ethan shouted. "You can't erase her." Valerius ignored him, nodding to the medics. "Purge the human's influence. And detain him for further study." That night, Kale paced his quarters, holograms of human protest movements flickering around him. The footage, clumsily spliced into Zenonian archives, showed marches, speeches, passion. A chime sounded. The door dissolved to reveal Lyra, disheveled and trembling. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "The stabilizer, it's not just memory erasure. It lobotomizes curiosity." Kale's resolve hardened. "Then we fight." "With what?" "Valerius controls the council. Not all of us." Kale activated a holographic map. "There are others. Quiet doubters. If we show them what you've shown me." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "The human archives. The music, the art, broadcast it publicly. Make them feel." Ethan awoke in a glass cell, his skull throbbing from neural scans. Valerius watched him coldly. "Your brain's emotional centers are fascinatingly primitive. We'll excise them for study." "You're making a mistake," Ethan growled. "Lyra's not some experiment. She's alive." "Alive?" Valerius leaned closer. "You've made her feral. But don't worry, we'll fix her." A tremor shook the facility. Alarms blared as the walls flickered with unauthorized holograms. Michelangelo's David materialized beside Zenonian statues, followed by Picasso's fractured geometries. Then music, Aretha Franklin's voice thundered through the halls, raw and unapologetic. Valerius froze. "What is this?" Ethan grinned. A little chaos. Lyra stood atop the central spire, Kale at her side. Below, crowds gathered as the hologram spread, Van Gogh's starry night skies colliding with Zenonian constellations, Maya Angelou's verses echoing in the air. "They're feeling," Kale whispered. A Zenonian child reached toward a holographic kitten, laughing as it nuzzled her palm. An elder wiped luminescent tears during a Chopin nocturne. Valerius's voice boomed through speakers. "Cease this madness. Lyra activated her calm, or what? You'll erase us all. We're not machines, Valerius. We're alive." The crowd stirred. A young Zenonian male stepped forward. "Let her speak." As dissent swelled, Ethan's guards hesitated. He broke free, sprinting toward the spire. Above him, Lyra spread her arms, a scientist turned revolutionary, glowing with borrowed starlight. Valerius's order cut through the noise. "Apprehend them." But the crowd didn't part. The chaos sparked by Lyra and Kale's broadcast of human art and music had thrown Xenon into turmoil. The Zenonian Council, once a bastion of unwavering order, was fractured. Some members, swayed by the emotions stirred within them, questioned the long-held traditions of their society. Others, like Counselor Valerius, clung desperately to the old ways, seeing Ethan and Lyra as a dangerous contagion. Ethan, having escaped his confinement with the help of sympathetic guards, joined Lyra and Kale atop the central spire. Together, they prepared to make their case before the Zenonian Council, hoping to sway them towards a new vision of Zenonian society, one that embraced emotions, valued individual expression, and fostered genuine connection. The council convened in the grand chamber, the air thick with tension. Counselor Valerius stood at the head, his face a mask of disapproval. "We have gathered to address the grave threat posed by the human, Ethan Riley, and his accomplice, Lyra," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Their actions have sown discord and chaos among our people, undermining the very foundations of our society." Ethan stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant. "Counselors, I came to Xenon by accident, but I have come to care deeply for your world and its people. I have seen the potential for greatness within you, but I have also seen the limitations imposed by your emotional suppression. Human emotions are not a weakness, but a source of strength, creativity, and compassion." Lyra added her voice to Ethan's. "We have been taught to fear our emotions, to see them as a threat to our order. But emotions are what make us human, or Zenonian. They drive us to connect with one another, to create art, to solve problems, and to strive for a better future." Kale presented data he had secretly compiled, showing that Zenonians who had been exposed to human art and music had demonstrated increased creativity, problem-solving skills, and empathy. "Our research shows that emotions can enhance our society, not destroy it," he argued. "We must learn to integrate them into our lives, to find a balance between reason and emotion." Counselor Valerius scoffed. "These are mere anecdotes, not scientific evidence. We cannot risk the stability of our society on the basis of sentimentality." A younger counselor, Naria, rose to speak. "With all due respect, Counselor Valerius, I have seen the changes happening within our people. I have witnessed the joy and wonder that human art and music have brought to their faces. We cannot ignore the potential for growth and evolution that lies within us." The debate raged for hours, with counselors on both sides passionately defending their views. Ethan and Lyra answered every question, addressing every concern, and sharing their vision of a new Xenon. They spoke of a society where emotions were embraced, where creativity was celebrated, and where individuals were free to express themselves without fear of judgment. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the council voted. The result was a narrow victory for Ethan and Lyra. The council agreed to establish a commission to study the potential benefits of integrating human emotions into Zenonian society. They also agreed to lift the ban on human art and music, allowing Zenonians to explore the richness and diversity of human culture. Counselor Valerius, defeated but unbowed, glared at Ethan and Lyra. "You may have won this battle," he said, his voice filled with venom, "but the war is far from over. I will not rest until Xenon is cleansed of your influence." Despite Valerius's threat, Ethan and Lyra were filled with hope. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were determined to create a better future for Xenon. They began working with the Commission to develop programs to teach Xenonians about human emotions, to encourage creativity in self-expression, and to foster genuine connection. Over time, Xenon began to change. Xenonians started to embrace their emotions, to explore their creativity, and to form deeper relationships with one another. Art and music flourished, filling the cities with color and sound. Xenonian society became more vibrant, more compassionate, and more resilient. Ethan and Lyra became symbols of change, inspiring other Xenonians to question their traditions and to embrace new ideas. They worked tirelessly to build bridges between human and Xenonian cultures, sharing knowledge, fostering understanding, and promoting peace. Years later, Xenon had transformed into a thriving and dynamic society, a beacon of hope in the galaxy. The Xenonians had learned to balance reason and emotion, order and chaos, individual freedom and social responsibility. They had created a society that was both technologically advanced and emotionally fulfilling. Ethan and Lyra stood together on the central spire, looking out over the transformed city. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride. "We changed Xenon for the better." Ethan smiled, taking her hand in his. "We did it together," he said. "And we're just getting started." As the sun set over Xenon, casting a warm glow on the crystalline structures, Ethan and Lyra knew that their journey had just begun. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together, with love, compassion, and unwavering hope. The Xenonians' awakening had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.